when you do the right thing just because, afterwards it feels good. It feels right somehow. And it's not like oh yeah, I feel good now, I'm gonna keep on doing it 'cause it makes me feel good. It's just, it feels right. And there's something special about the comics and the movies and everything else that makes people feel that way. And above and beyond all that, hope. He just represents hope, and in every walk of life we need it. Throughout history we've needed it, human history, and will continue to need it for the rest of our futures.
Welcome to In Defense Of, a series where we take a closer look at films or shows that are typically looked down upon and see if we can look at them in a different light. Today we're going to be discussing the birth of the DCU with the underrated masterpiece that is... Do you believe in hope? Do you believe in the fundamental idea that one can persevere off a feeling that is so deeply rooted in our emotion rather than our inept sense of knowledge? Is it truly possible to hope? Zack Snyder's 2013 epic, Man of Steel, was the start of a new franchise at Warner Brothers, known as the DC Extended Universe, better known as the DCU. It was an attempt to make an interconnected universe to rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe's success. Was Warner Brothers successful at achieving this goal? Absolutely not. Was Snyder successful at telling his own narrative? Abso-fucking-lutely. Back when Man of Steel came out, it was considered a boring, lackluster film that was too bleak. Fans clamored together to complain all about two aspects of the film: the destruction of Metropolis and Zod's death. The film did well at the box office, but was divisive amongst critics and fans. As the years have passed, I have tried to grasp and understand people's dislike towards this film that I hold so dear to my heart and have failed to feel the rejection that others do. For me, every time I sit down to experience the awe that is Man of Steel, I find myself loving it more and more, making me believe furthermore that it might possibly be the most underrated comic book film of all time. Let me tell you why. Zack Snyder is looked at as a divisive filmmaker. You either love his films or you fucking hate them. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I fucking love his films. I guess since that's the case, you can consider me a Snyder cultist. Zack Snyder can be considered as a filmmaker who makes long, pretentious, visually stunning but soulless movies that pretend to be something more. You couldn't be more wrong. Zack Snyder is a man, an artist, who is like us. A person who is so desperately and passionately in love with entertainment on all levels and spews his love all over the screen for us. He puts his whole heart into every scene, every frame, and every shot. You watch a Zack Snyder film and you go, wow, that's a motherfucker that loves what he's doing. He grabs you and brings you in. He creates a canvas where the impossible is possible, and he breathes life into every aspect of his creation. He is not pretentious. He is emotionally open. He wants the audience to see a part of him. He's like a little kid who wants to show his parents the new cool picture he drew at school. He wants to connect to his audience. He wants his audience to experience what he felt making his movie. In return, you become emotionally invested if you allow yourself to. His films are not soulless. They're about understanding emotion on a subtle, quiet, and almost non-existent level, allowing characters to handle emotion on an internal level, like most of us do. Man of Steel is not a soulless movie. It's a film that proves Zack Snyder has a soul. The movie is filmed almost like a documentary, allowing the audience to be a fly on the wall, creating a more intimate and grounded setting. We are constantly seeing things on such a small, humanary scale that when we get to these larger-than-life Zack Snyder money shots, they take our breath away. We are awestruck, and we feel it tingling in the back of our eyes. There is a constant need to not show too much. There is a constant pull back on everything in the film. The film wants to be extremely subtle, so when it's not, it brings a whole new level of thrills or emotional excitement. The camera is always placed close to our characters, not in an annoying way, but one that shows us that nothing else in the world is more important than what is being shown to us on screen. Keeping that intimacy locked in, giving more emotional power and weight to dialogue-heavy scenes, whether it be a father admiring his son, a newfound crush flourishing, or time for a character to reflect. The lighting never gives the look of something produced in a studio, but shot on location, allowing our characters to be one with the surroundings, giving it more of that grounded look that I love and appreciate so much. The sets are beautifully and masterfully created with Kryptonian language, a language that they went out of their way to actually make and display on everything they could. All over Cavill's gorgeous looking suit has the Kryptonian language transcribed all over it, giving the texture and the symbol of hope a whole new meaning. A quote that is engraved on the suit in Kryptonian is one from an American author who wrote and studied mythology and comparative religion named Joseph Campbell, which states, "Where we had thought to stand alone, we will be with all the world." This describing the story of a man who believed he would be an outcast for his whole life, just to one day join the same people in the sun. It's been overly talked to death about, so I'll keep it short and to the point. Snyder is a master at visuals. That's what he's known for. He brings life to films by incorporating stunning visual flair. He starts off all his films by drawing the whole movie frame by frame, explaining where the camera goes, where it's going to be positioned in a scene, and how it will be moving. He can show you his entire movie before it's even filmed. He is a man who knows what he wants and how he wants it. When it comes to how the visual effects were accomplished, they perfectly used practical when they could to once again ground the story, and then blended it in flawlessly with the CG. This meticulous, hands-on approach to his filmmaking is one of the major reasons I love him as a filmmaker and his particular style. Snyder is not talked enough about when it comes to action. My man knows how to pull together some extremely well-crafted action sequences, whether it be a hand-to-hand fight or pure destruction and chaos. Oddly enough, there's not a lot of slow motion in this film, despite it being one of Snyder's key traits as a filmmaker. I actually appreciate that for this film, because he gives the hand-to-hand combat a lot of fast-paced motion and it pronounces the character's abilities. Speaking of abilities, you feel the raw strength of these beings and truly express their power through these action scenes. When they hit each other or crash into a building, they add these white sound effects in post that really show rather than tell us their brawn. This is a bit of a tangent, but I absolutely love the way they break down the science of the Kryptonians' powers and how they gain them and have to learn how to control them. I also like the idea that it took years for Clark to learn how to control his powers, and Zod was able to get it right away, showing how he is physically more superior and able to endure more pain, since that's what he was bred to do. Speaking of Zod, Michael Shannon, man, he showed the fuck up, I'll tell you that. He looked at that script and took it insanely serious. Every scene he's in, he brings an enormous amount of emotional versatility. You genuinely buy the fact that this is a man who is so deeply in love with his people that it brings him so much pain throughout the movie to have to cause all the pain he does. He attempts to give chances to characters to have them see his point of view, and when they don't agree with him, you can see that when he makes up his mind to get them out of his way, it breaks him to make those kind of decisions. You can see that he is obsessive in his beliefs, because these beliefs are all that gives his life purpose. He is protective of his beliefs because they have been drilled into his core and were bred into him. Shannon is a horrifying yet vulnerable presence. His performance is so intimidating that just a mere glance of this man's eyes brings sheer terror down your spine. He commands every scene he is in. You cannot take your eyes off him. I don't think he gets enough praise for this role. I believe he gives one of the best villain performances in a comic book property to date. He deserves so much more recognition for the range and acting bravado his performance has. What a true thespian. Hans Zimmer is a musical god. He can have an ambitiously absurd amount of motifs and riffs going on at the same time, and yet still have a very predominant melody at the forefront. I genuinely believe that the score to Man of Steel actually raises the quality of the film to a whole other degree. The score is so insanely immersive and brings out the passionate feelings of the human soul. He plays on every emotion we feel and uses it as his instrument. The music is a character in the film, and I love it. The way it can be so subtle, quiet, simplistic, and intimate, then slowly build up to these loud, bombastic orchestrated swells with blaring drums and trumpets. But it's the honesty behind the music where the emotion lies. Hans is able to bring such a sincerity with the piano melodies he uses. Nothing is more elegant and honest than the piano. As much as I love the subtlety of the score, I can't lie to myself. I fucking love the bombasticness too. He was the perfect choice for Superman. He expressed that one of the reasons he took the job was due to the lack of feeling that he belongs anywhere. being a foreigner who is always bouncing around countries working. It can make him feel like an outsider, making his connection to this film strong. And it shows because, man, this is a fucking Superman theme. Man of Steel is one of the most subtly emotional superhero films of all time. And if you truly allow everyone's performances, Zack's direction, Goyer's script, Han's score, you can feel it all come together in a profoundly beautiful way. You slowly see every character relationship in the movie form in its own unique way, clearly giving Clark more character refinement, allowing us as an audience to see every dimension that his Superman has to offer. You can see the vulnerability with his mother. You can see the angst he expresses with his father. You feel the love between a father and a son who have never met. You feel the fiddling romance brewing between Lois and Clark. All these relations keep forming with these complex ideas and philosophies that keep stacking upon one another. Every relation, every conversation builds Clark's emotionally charged character arc where he understands that he does not have to be an outsider. He can be one with the world. In return, he can hope for something more with his life. He does not have to be that scared little boy, but the fearless man who will someday guide the world. I don't want to harp on this for too long. All I really want to say is I appreciate that the opening sets up so much and utilized Krypton in such an important way. You get to see a glimpse of their civilization before it all went to hell. By seeing the destruction and waste of life for ourselves, we already understand Zod's motives so much better. And lastly, Krypton has so much amazing detail within the few minutes of screen time it gets. You get to see their fashion, socio-political parties, their language, their plantation, their wildlife, their homes, their architecture, their technology, and their culture all together. It's all very fascinating and nice to know that they took the time to put all those pieces together properly. I wanted to take some time to look at some criticisms. One of the biggest being the destruction of Metropolis. I get it. There's a lot of destruction, there isn't enough Superman saving people. It's supposed to show that he isn't a completely reformed Superman. He still has a lot of learning to do, so he's clumsy and he's a bit reckless. You have to admit though, it does have everything a humongous third act of a superhero epic should. There are real stakes, emotional drama, and insanely creative set pieces. I believe that Batman v Superman rectified this by having it be the main reason Bruce wants to take him out and why a lot of governments and people dislike Superman. The movie solves that problem, let's just move on from it. Alright, here's the big one, and honestly, I'm not going to defend it. The main reason behind this decision was, once again, to show that Clark has a way to go as Superman. But damn, not like this. I mean, he could have covered his eyes or picked him up and flown him out of there. But even with the insanity that the scene brings, I can't help but get emotional during it. Cavill's acting is superb. He becomes that scared little boy once more in a fraction of a second, and it's genuinely heartbreaking to watch the way he folds up and clutches Lois's legs and sobs into her stomach. Overall, it's a really great scene. Henry Cavill is Superman. He is nerdy, posh, polite, and all around a great guy. He wanted this role his whole life. He even went after it for Superman Returns all those years ago. He was born to play this character, a character he deeply respects and has such a love for. He plays Clark as this silent figure who looms in a scene, taking everything in, allowing himself to understand his surroundings without fully embracing it and becoming one with it. He plays a man who has trust issues and has felt left out because he has been left out his whole life. He constantly holds back something in every scene, showing that part of Clark that won't allow his emotions to come forth brings havoc into his life. Yet, he does not shy away from showing his affection towards his mother and Lois. Henry truly understood what it meant to be the Man of Steel. Clark is a sloppy Superman who is still learning how to control his emotions and be the man he's supposed to be. He is learning how to properly save people and makes plenty of mistakes along the way. But Snyder was building up to the Superman we all know and love. We just had to give it some time and trust the development that he was doing with the Clark character. And that's something we got to see in the Snyder Cut. How do you have this? You do this. How do you get this? You start here. You want a story to be grand and epic? You build your characters out small and you go from there. There's a restraint in this film with how things are shot, with the documentary filmmaking creating a smaller scale atmosphere that lingers even when the monumental set pieces arrive. This story takes a Superman character who is supposed to be an alien from another planet and makes him a human being. A person with complex emotions that feels the need to keep them locked up or even flee across the world to hide them so others won't be affected. He is made to be like us. Clark is a man like us who wants to find his purpose in life. He wants to know that he wasn't a mistake, that he isn't a freak. He wants to understand who he is. Don't we all want to know that our existence has purpose? That we're not here to suffer and then die? He only wants to belong and be loved. Isn't that the most human thing a person can feel? Isn't that the most important thing a person needs in order to feel? Clark has two stories in this film. One of his as an adult, and the other as a child growing up to be the man he needs to be. And every time you cut back to this child, he is scared and confused. All he knows is he wants to be somewhere and he can't find it. He's lost in a fog, blinding him from where he needs to be versus where he wants to be. He is learning to become scared to express his emotions. He is learning to hide them. In return, he feels the need to hide himself. He mistakes what his parents mean about not letting others see his gifts. He has to learn how to understand. He needs to learn how to hope. In conclusion, Man of Steel is a film that had so much love put into it by every person involved. Snyder wanted to make a film where you were emotionally teased throughout in a quiet and beautiful way. Clark has grown to be a person who is closeted off from the world to protect himself. His arc is that he has to open up to allow hope to fill his veins and give in to having people in his life. He has to learn that he's not a mistake, that his gifts are not curses. He has the power to change lives, but in order to do so, he must stumble. He must fall. And one day, he can love himself enough to love those around him, to bring them that same love, that same hope. Have you ever been hurt that you need time away to reflect? Maybe you're hurt by someone. Or maybe you hurt yourself. Maybe you were the one that didn't believe in themselves. You looked in the mirror and you hated what you saw. And you lost hope. Your pain triumphed. But hopefully, you, like Clark, learn that your pains shape you, but they do not have to define who you are. You stumbled. You fell. But I'm sure you got back up. Because we as a human race learn how to press forward. We learn how to put our logic aside and accept our emotions. We learn how to hope.